Hello, I'm Emmett Lombard, librarian at Gannon University. Welcome to the first of what the library hopes to be many videos about information literacy. Special thanks to Theater, Communication, and Fine Arts Department colleagues for producing these videos. Find www.gannon.edu/library for future interviews and conversations between librarians, faculty, students, and other guests pursuing information literacy. Today's guest is Brent Sleasman. Dr. Sleasman holds the PhD in Communication and Rhetorical Studies from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. He teaches public speaking at Gannon. In his book, Albert Camus' Philosophy of Communication, Making Sense in an Age of Absurdity, was recently accepted for publication by Cambria Press. Dr. Sleasman frequently pursues information literacy in his teaching and scholarship, and we have collaborated on numerous projects. Good day, Doctor, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation, Emmett.
Doctor, what role, how important is information literacy to you and to the success of your students in class?
Well, as you said, most of the classes that I teach are public speaking, or at Gannon, the fundamentals of speech class. And from my vantage point, information literacy and the sources that students use have everything to do with a student's credibility. And so as a student is thinking about making a presentation, and especially when it comes to persuasive speaking, but even for informative speaking, a student always wants to take into account their own personal credibility. And the sources that I use, the timeliness of those sources, the quality of the sources, the familiarity of the sources to the audience is tremendously important. So as far as the classes that I teach, information literacy, when it comes to a presentation, is very significant, and so we try to give a significant amount of time to it to emphasize that and to give students the tools to be able to include the sources accurately.
Would you say that once class ends, the need for information literacy ends, or can these folks anticipate information literacy being a part of their professional lives as well?
Well, one of the things that that I try to reinforce in the class is that every speaking situation is different. And so if they're in the marketplace trying to make a sell, if they're in the business field to someone, then the sources that they're going to rely upon, they're going to change, but they're still absolutely important. The same thing, even if it's a sports commentator, where they get their information. If it's a teacher, where they're getting their information. So no, it doesn't end right at the classroom. And so information literacy and the ability to do that, even if they're not going to necessarily give the exact type of speaking assignment that we talk about in the class, it's vitally important both in the classroom, but especially in the marketplace. Again, for me, it's an issue of credibility, not how many sources, not the specifics of the assignment, but it's if I want to be credible in whatever situation I'm in, then I need to be well aware of what the sources that I'm using or not using are saying about me as a speaker.
With information literacy is often associated with the library. What role does the library play in information literacy in your profession or in your approach to teaching, Doctor?
Well, one of the ways for myself in my own research, I still love a book. And books, they're expensive, and so the library obviously is a place that you can access a book, but also a journal. But that's just the print version. In addition to that, there's a lot of online resources that the library provides. And so if I want to find the most credible sources, again, for me, it's an issue of credibility. So if I want to find the most up-to-date and the credible sources, there's a variety of online resources that a student could make use of, or a professional for that matter. And then also, not just the resources that are available, but the people, like yourself and others who work here at the library. If I have a question as a professor or as a student, it makes sense I can ask my professor in the classroom, but yourself, you're a professor here on campus as well. And so if I wanted to ask a question about information literacy, I'd come to you. So thinking about it, I'd make use of the print sources that are here, the online sources, but also the people that are here. And that's one of the benefits, I think, of a higher education, that you have all of those focused in one specific building. That's a tremendous asset to faculty or students.
Thank you, Doctor. Where do you see the future of information literacy and public speaking going?
Well, you alluded earlier about the fact that we've collaborated in the classroom on some projects. And the reason that whole exercise for me came out in debating the significance of traditional versus internet sources is what we work on in class, is because I'm not sure where it's going. And that's why, for me, I return back to that idea of credibility, because credibility as a speaker, that's never going to go away. What makes a credible source in 2011 versus 2025, it's going to look different. And I think we're kind of in an in-between time that we're still figuring out. Online publishing is growing. Even self-publishers are growing. What's a blog count for? And there's a lot of news sources over the last 5 or 10 years that the traditional way of thinking about information literacy never anticipated. And so trying to help students think through that, but it's a challenge for myself, and students are very helpful, because when I raise the issue of, well, what source do you trust as a student, I've watched the change even in the last 5 years about what a student would trust as a credible source and what I trust, and we don't always think the same way. And so to your question about, where's the future of it going, I'm not sure, and that's why, again, I always anchor it in that idea of credibility, and I think it's something that's vitally necessary for ongoing research and conversation and even elements like this, because we need to keep talking about it, because this may be obsolete as far as content in 3 to 5 years if there's new technologies or new ways to think about things that emerge. Doesn't mean that it's not important, but we just need to stay current, because what a student trusts changes from time to time.
Excellent. Any parting words of advice for students, maybe not even so much your particular students in public speaking, but any students, as far as success, academic success in its relationship to information literacy in the library?
I think that number one, and this is more from my classroom experience, but the thing that I found is that if we as speakers don't do our research, our audience members will. And so if we do shoddy research as far as looking up things, or if we stand up in front and say, I just had a student today stand up and say something along the lines of, well, no one's ever found this. Well, if I sit down even to do a Google search and type this word in, my inclination is I'm probably going to find things that he didn't. And that says a lot to me, again, about his credibility or his lack of it, because he didn't spend a lot of time researching. And so I guess my parting words would be, if you don't do your research as a speaker, those that you're talking to and your audience members will. And if it bears out that you were right, it just reinforces your credibility. But on the negative side, if I find something as an audience member that you openly said never existed or I couldn't find, it begins to raise questions for me about how much you really were invested in that topic, and then, again, has a negative impact on your credibility as a presenter.
Doctor, very insightful. We really appreciate your time here today. That's all that we have for you. Thanks again go to the Theater, Communication, Fine Arts Department for producing this video. And as I mentioned earlier on, if you would like to see future videos, if you go to our website, www.gannon.edu/library, this video and others will be up there in the future. Until then, keep up with the research. Stay credible, as our colleague Dr. Sleasman advises. Good day.